Welcome to The More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. Hi, I'm Kevin Kelton. I live in Los Angeles, and I'm a moderate Democrat.
And I am Greg Matusak. I am your liberal Democrat tonight from Cincinnati, Ohio.
I'm DJ McGuire. I'm your conservative libertarian from Suffolk, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Emily Brewer. I'm your moderate Republican from Virginia.
And congrats are in order, as this is the 50th episode of A More Perfect Union.
Yay!
With over 100...
Yay!
Yay! Applause. With over 100,000 downloads, A More Perfect Union may just be the fastest growing political podcast on iTunes. A More Perfect Union can now also be found on YouTube and iHeartRadio. And you can find our website with host bios and commentary, moreperfectunionpodcast.com.
Yay!
So, how was everybody's week?
Well, I have a food craving this week I want to talk about, and it's tacos. I'm really craving them, actually.
Why would that be?
I hear that we're going to get a taco truck on every corner. Anybody hear anything about this?
Yeah, that's the best political promise I've ever heard.
But it was more of a threat,
Yes,
wasn't it?
It was a threat.
It
What
was a
that
threat.
person was thinking at that moment, it just, I hate to get serious so quickly. It just goes to show you what racism is. That someone talking off the top of his head would think this is going to dissuade voters from voting for Hillary Clinton. That, oh my gosh, your neighborhood might be infested with taco trucks.
So let's give our listeners a little background on what we're talking about real quick. Marco Gutierrez, who is the Latinos for Trump, founder, went off talking about immigration and says, "My people will have taco trucks on every corner," was the basis of his quote on live TV, which was, I don't think that's a threat. I think that's actually pretty awesome.
By 2020, every Republican candidate for president will find a neighborhood in Des Moines, look around, and demand to know why Clinton hasn't delivered on the taco truck she promised. Never mind that she's never said anything about this. This was probably the worst own goal in presidential politics since Michael Dukakis put the helmet on and got in the tank. I am flabbergasted by just how utterly stupid this was. Now, granted, to be fair, he doesn't have a lot to work with. Trump took his third immigration position in less than 2 weeks in Arizona by saying, yeah, we probably will try to deport them all if we can. After first saying he would definitely do it, then saying he definitely wouldn't do it. Now he's saying, yeah, we'll deport them when we ever get around to it, which is perfect in ensuring that he alienates everybody, because the folks to his left will want to know why he's still deporting folks whose only real crime is looking to come into America for a better life, admittedly unauthorized. And the folks on his right will want to know why he isn't going to try to deport everybody in his first 100 days. He has managed to alienate everybody. He's managed to upset everybody. So it was, strangely enough, it was probably better for him that we are now all talking about taco trucks than talking about his flip-flop-flip on this issue.
Well, let's talk a little bit about where he stands now on his immigration policy. To me, it sounds like he's kind of repackaging self-deportation, which worked so well for Mitt Romney. I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't want to go down that road. But it still smacks of racism to me. This idea that, well, first we're going to round up and immediately get rid of all the criminals who are illegal aliens. And he quoted a number, he said, could be as high as 2 million, which is about 1,970,000 too high. I mean, it's just a ridiculous number.
It may have been that if he was just looking at misdemeanors and calling them criminal, then that might trip the figure. Most Americans, hang on, most Americans would not consider misdemeanor offenders to be criminal. And the thing we all miss about this is entering the United States without proper authorization has only been a criminal offense for about a dozen years. Prior to that, it was a civil offense. It was not a criminal offense for it to be considered a felon or anything else until 2005.
What bill made it a criminal offense? I wasn't aware of that.
I don't remember the particular bill. I just know that it was done sometime in 2004 and 2005. It was the only part of President George W. Bush's immigration reform package that made it to his desk for him to sign, if memory serves. So there's that. But to make a long story short, I guess I would come relatively to the same view on this that Kevin does. Most Americans don't hold this view. Most Americans do not consider entering the country without authorization as something that they consider to be overly criminal behavior. Even those who have concerns about the security issues, even those who have concerns about the effect this might have on local governments, even those who have concerns about the effect this might have on low-skilled labor, they don't have the animosity that Trump continually displays on this over and over and over again.
You know, the one thing that also I find interesting about his ever-changing is that his surrogates and his subordinates can't keep up with him. So I saw an interview with Mike Pence this morning, and they kept asking him, and he has no idea what Trump's immigration policy is. Giuliani this morning kept saying, we're only going to deport the bad guys, but we're going to keep people. And he wasn't really quite sure what Trump's immigration policy is.
Yeah, I think that was probably more a dodge on Giuliani's part. He says we'll deport the bad guys, which is because to most of the Republican base, all of them are bad guys. And then those folks who are not the base, not all of them are bad guys.
They're all dodging at this point because no one knows. I mean, it's this great kind of mystery. Yeah, go on.
You're right. And to be fair to Mike Pence doesn't know what he himself thinks about religious liberty. So I can understand why he'd be totally confused about what somebody else thinks about anything.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, Mike. Now, obviously, I think that it's already been established that this isn't so much a play for the Latino vote, nor is his visit to an African-American church a play for the black vote, as it's a play to soften his image to try to win over more white middle-class women. And in that regard, is the Trump strategy working? It does seem like his poll numbers have gotten a little bit better. Of course, Hillary's maybe are getting a little worse. We'll talk about that later, but is this play to soften him up to be more palatable to Republicans who otherwise would always vote Republican, but are really put off by the harshness of, his first year of running for president? Is he making the switch? Is he making the pivot? Is he making the pivot that's necessary to...
I think Emily's the one to answer that one.
Look. I am not a surrogate here. However, so here's what I think that we're failing to really talk about as far as campaigns go. In the past, couple years even, we've seen not on the presidential, but the local and state level, is that we are moving into a window where the time and ability to be able to pivot is getting obviously on a smaller scale. So before, something could sink somebody in June or July, and now people can recover as late as September, October. Hell, we might even get into November this year. We don't know. So I think that he is pivoting, but we still have so much time left. I think it's really, really hard to ascertain if this will have any quantifiable result. I mean, there's a reason that major polling companies have gotten out of the business, is because just the reliability is so much harder to track.
And I don't want to bring up sore subjects or sore topics, but recently you just came out for Trump. But do you think it's because of his softening and his views? I mean, and not saying that you're a suburban white woman, but you're a suburban white woman.
Well, I mean, my tan is getting darker. I mean, nothing. So here's the deal, is that, I'm not as much for Trump as I am protecting the policies and platforms I believe in. So, I'm not carrying around a banner, or I'm not wearing T-shirts in public or anything. So don't put that cross on me yet, please. There's just some obviously platform pieces that belong to the Republican Party that matter a little bit more than some other things. So.
And you really think that Trump actually gives a damn about those?
Somebody will have to check him.
If he actually is in the White House, nobody will check him. That's what being in the White House means.
You really think so?
Yes, absolute power. Absolute power.
It is not a matter of absolute power. It is a matter of he is under no obligation to appoint the people that, say, you and I would prefer that he appoints. And he's not going to do it. He is going to appoint people who make him comfortable. not people who make either you or I comfortable, because that's what he does.
So you don't feel like that he would make more conservative choices than Hillary would for the Supreme Court?
No, I have no confidence that he would do that. Absolutely
Okay.
not.
Okay.
And Emily, it comes back to, although I actually do think that at least his first choice would probably be on the conservative side, it comes back to where we kind of left off last week, which is, when you think about Donald Trump, now you were at the convention, you've seen him speak. Do you say, okay, competent businessman who's acting like a buffoon for political reasons, but once in office would make relatively rational decisions that would be more along the conservative side, and yes, he may be impulsive, but he can't do too much damage. Is that your view of him?
That's about where I'm at, because even when I was sitting in the convention, I was, I'm an eternal optimist anyway, so I'm sitting there at the night that he used to speak, and I was really hoping to hear something that was going to be like the pivot, the big pivot. And I heard nothing much different than what he would speak in a rally. And honestly, even then I wasn't sold. Even then, I was severely disappointed. And you know what? I still am. My decision to vote for him isn't because I feel like he's done a major pivot. My decision to vote for him is more because I feel like he's starting to align with people that I'm hoping will be able to guide him in the right direction.
But isn't that a risky proposition in a vote for the president? That
it's just as risky as DJ voting for Gary Johnson, don't you think?
On the contrary, Gary Johnson actually has a record that I'm frankly quite fond of. He issued massive vetoes to spending requests from the Democratic legislature. He insisted that any agency in New Mexico put a cost-benefit analysis together before they went forward with the new program. He actually imposed some discipline on the government of New Mexico, and he pushed very hard for school choice in Mexico. He actually has a record of moving the ball forward on things that I think should be moved forward. Donald Trump has no such record. He has no such reassurance. It's basically a gigantic trust me with a guy who I've seen for 30 years who has shown that he cannot be trusted except for two things. One, he will always promote himself, and two, he will always be a rank trade protectionist. And guess what? I disagree with trade protectionism, so I have no reason to vote for the man, and so I won't.
Yeah, boy.
You know what's crazy, guys, is did you guys hear that DJ paid off one of our newspapers here, actually? He paid off the Richmond Times-Dispatch to actually endorse Gary Johnson. Can you believe this?
Yes, my massive slush fund convinced the Times-Dispatch, which has been around for nearly 70 years longer than I am, to step up and endorse my choice, Gary Johnson. It actually says something, though, because the RTD, the Times-Dispatch, as we know it here, has generally been the paper of record for the Republican center, for the center within the Republican Party. I've had my arguments with them sometimes, no doubt. But for them to step up and say, Donald Trump is not the guy, Gary Johnson is, it really is I can't think of a better symbol here in Virginia for how badly off the rails the Republicans have gone. And frankly, let's give the Libertarians some credit, because they did this before I joined up, for saying, something? Donald Trump has left a lot of Republicans out there who don't have a home. We're going to give them a home and go outside of our comfort zone by nominating Johnson and Weld. That was a big risk on their part, a big move on their part. I appreciate it, and the Richmond Times-Dispatch appreciates it. And whatever happens going forward, the simple fact of the matter is there is going to be, and as there must be, a genuine argument within the center-right as to how to go forward, because the Trump-led Republican Party is just no longer a vehicle that works anymore. I'm sorry, it just isn't.
Okay, but
right,
let me ask
you a question. Let me get this in, because this is germane to the paper. Is print media endorsements dead? Do anyone really care? I mean, does it really influence anybody? I think, and in my opinion, I don't think they're important. I think an endorsement, sadly, by Kanye West is more important because it influences more people. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, or an endorsement by a noted person, because no one reads newspapers anymore. It's not that big of a deal. So, and yes, symbolically it might be important, But, and you can agree, what do you think about that?
Newspaper endorsements, do they matter with the general population? Maybe, maybe not. They probably don't matter much with what we call swing voters. But this isn't about swing voters. This is about folks who would normally consider themselves committed Republicans, who are uncomfortable with Trump. And the Richmond Times-Dispatch has said, at least in Virginia, to those of us who live in Virginia, there is another alternative and it's okay to vote for them.
Okay, so let me now, with that in mind, ask this question of my colleagues, which is, can we at least, the four of us, can we get a consensus that neither Gary Johnson nor Jill Stein are going to be elected president in 2016?
Without question.
Greg?
Without question. I agree with Emily on most things except presidential candidates. But
Okay.
yes, she's absolutely correct.
DJ, will you at least acknowledge or cede that reality?
I will acknowledge that a Johnson election is unlikely at this stage.
No,
Yes.
not unlikely. Will you acknowledge that it's not going to happen?
No, I can't acknowledge that. We have 3 months to go.
You really think...
Will you buy?
No,
I've got some timeshare for you.
I will acknowledge we're talking about a Dumb and Dumber chance that he would be elected, but a Dumb and Dumber chance is still better than zero. I will acknowledge it is a very, very, very slim chance. Yes, but I won't acknowledge it's zero. I'll acknowledge it's not much greater than zero.
But
yes,
the slim part of the chance is based on the assumption that something so far out of the ordinary happens. One of the two main candidates dying or being incapacitated, or a huge major scandal that would incapacitate their ability to be elected. We're not talking about he's slowly going to build up, enough momentum that he can get to 35% of the vote and win over 32 and 31% of the vote.
No, I do not see that happening. This is more for me, this is more a long-term political strategy that looks beyond this election to building an alternative to the Republican Party on the right, much as, say, the Social Democrats and the Liberals look to build an alternative to Labor on the left in Great Britain. And admittedly, that didn't work. But that's essentially what we're talking about here. It's going to take some time. Could it conceivably happen in this election? Yeah, there's a very, very, very slim chance. But it's more likely that it would take several election cycles for the Libertarians to replace the Republicans as the alternative on the right. And it may never happen. But I have to try.
Yeah. Okay.
I have something interesting, I think, to tag on to the Johnson piece is, obviously, I think, Jill Stein or Gary Johnson have not a snowball's chance in hell. However, I will say this, and you guys might be shocked by this, is if Gary Johnson keeps on picking up the earned media that he is, the polls are showing that he's trending towards reaching the threshold for a debate, and I think he might get into a debate. I'm feeling stronger and stronger about that.
Okay. Well, again, anything's possible, but let's talk about the reality of where we are now.
I'm going to interrupt. Remember when I said I agree with everything Emily says? Yeah, that's out the window now. That's gone.
That's gone.
That's gone.
So
Sorry.
here's the reality of where we are. After Labor Day, we happen to be doing this podcast the day before Labor Day. After Labor Day, which will be September 6th, there will be approximately 2 weeks for Gary Johnson to make his move in the polls. This is from the USA Today. The debate commission will only invite candidates to the debate who score above 15% in at least 5 national polls, or an average of those polls. Surveys from ABC News, Washington Post, that's 1. CBS News, New York Times is 2. CNN ORC is number 3. Fox and the NBC, Fox News is number 4. And the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll is number 5, as of what they call mid-September. But let's give him a little leeway and say that could even happen up until the 22nd or 23rd of September, because I think the first debate is scheduled for the 26th. Right now he's currently at about 9.2% in an average of those polls, but he has to get above 15% in every one of them. I misspoke before, not just an average. He has to score above 15% in 5 different polls.
Now that will change some things. I mean, he's hovering between 10 and 14 in a lot of the state-specific polls. But if it's not an average, polls, you're saying right. It's not an average, correct?
That's what not an average. That's what this article says.
That does change things then.
Now, this article maybe wasn't written accurately. Maybe it is an average and they just didn't write it correctly, but that's not what the USA Today article states.
Or they could fold like the Republicans during the debate process.
Or they could fold, or there's one more possibility, which is that he doesn't get into the first debate, but his numbers go up subsequently and he makes it into the second or third debate.
Frankly, that's more likely. I think that's actually more likely because it would probably take, assuming it happens, because it could very well be that one of the two major party candidates who decides they would rather the debates not happen suddenly say, I don't care what the commission wants. If Gary Johnson isn't invited to the debates, I'm not showing up either. Trump could use that if he decides he doesn't want to debate. He doesn't really want to debate Clinton. He'd probably want Jill Stein.
I think he actually will do that at some point. I think he's going to demand they be at some point.
It may very well be that Clinton decides she'd rather have Johnson there as a sort of foil to sort of hoover up any anti-Trump, anti-Clinton votes. That's a little less likely. Clinton may be confident enough to think she can beat Trump one-on-one. It could very well be that you have to see the first debate, and those who are not comfortable with either Trump or Clinton would have to actually see the first debate and go, oh my God, can we please find somebody else? That you would see Johnson jumping up in the polls to where he may qualify for the other debates.
As far as these debates go, Hillary has to completely destroy Trump. Because the expectation is so high that if Trump just stands there and gets through, then he's going to win. So having Johnson there, right? And he will.
I'll tell you what's going to happen then. Then Trump is going to win the first debate. Mm-hmm. We're all going to go. Trump's going to win the first debate. Kevin's going to have a heart attack. You're going to have an anxiety.
Based on what? Based on him being presidential? Based on what?
No.
It doesn't even have to, because the expectations
low
are
expectations.
So high.
That's what you think.
It's going to be the equivalent. It's going to be the equivalent of Mondale '84, where all he had to do, he showed up. He had a few witticisms. Reagan had essentially data dumped by his campaign, so he was out of his character. And Clinton is going to be out of her character if she tries to land the knockout blow on Trump. That's not who she is. She's a grinder, and grinders don't win debates. So she will either try to swing. She'll either try for the knockout blow at Trump and miss, or she'll stick to her grinder strategy. Either way, Trump will exceed expectations in the first debate. He will, quote, win, unquote. He won't actually win. You'll have a heart attack, Kevin. Greg will have an anxiety attack, and I'll have to remind all of you that we've gone through this before in 1984 and 2004 and 2012, and then Trump's expectations will rise for the second debate, and if Johnson is not included, Clinton will be superior to Trump in the second debate, as she was in the first debate, but the expectations will be different, and people will go, oh, Clinton has righted the ship, blah, 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 and it will just be like 1984 all over again.
Just as a history lesson for our listeners who may not be as up to date on the history of this as the four of us are, in the first debate between Ronald Reagan and Walter Mondale in 1984, it wasn't that Mondale exceeded expectations, although he was a fairly competent debater, having been in the Senate for so many years. But Ronald Reagan had possibly the worst debate performance literally in the history of televised presidential debates. He was the claim from his campaign was that they overprepped him, but he was doddering, he was forgetful, he came off frankly as senile, and people who have been raised, maybe Emily falls into this category, on the legend of Ronald Reagan being the great communicator, who didn't really live through as an adult the reality of the Reagan years, may not know this, but he was a great communicator at times, but he was an awful communicator at other times. And that first debate, boy, he lost it, and he lost it badly.
Well, he was overprep. He lost his way trying to spew out a bunch of data, and that was part of the problem. And for the second debate, the "let Reagan be Reagan" people finally won the argument, because the attempt of the not let Reagan be Reagan people, for lack of a better term, to say, oh, he needs to look like he's book smart. He needs to look like he has all this data at his fingertips. They tried that in the first debate, and it failed spectacularly. Then in the second debate, he said famously, "I will not exploit my opponent's youth and inexperience," which was just a hilarious turn on the age question because he was 73.
Right.
So that's essentially what happened. But I actually looked at what I actually think about is more the 2012 debate, the first Romney-Obama debate.
Right.
Because I remember, I actually watched Fox News for that one. And Fox News, when the first debate was over, said, interesting, Romney may have won on points, but Obama held his own. MSNBC completely lost their minds. Yeah, they thought the world was coming to an end.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually sitting there, and I'm watching Fox News give Obama a better rating for a debate than MSNBC. I thought I'd stepped through the looking glass. I'm like, oh, crap, I'm in the fringe alternate universe. Where's the amber? Sweet Jesus, the Twin Towers are up, but the White House is down. What the hell's going on here?
Great
well,
reference.
That's
all right.
But that's probably what's going to happen in 2016. Trump will not drool at the mouth. Well, he may drool at the mouth, but he will largely talk in semi-coherent sentences, and everybody will go, oh, Clinton didn't land a knockout blow. Maybe this was more competitive than it was, and we'll go through this all over again.
Yeah, you may be
What would Clinton have to do? What would Clinton have to do to win this? Would she not have to engage? Would she have to stay above the fray? Or does she have to get down and dirty and, stab a bitch?
Oh,
I mean, actually pull a knife out and kill her.
I think she's just running the clock out.
I'm talking about the debate.
I think that she's going to have a couple of lines that are not zingers per se, but they are planted to push Trump's buttons. Not in an overt way where we would go, oh, I can't believe she said that, or, oh, look, there she is taking off the gloves. It's not going to be that kind of a line. But she will have some lines, for instance, referencing his 4 bankruptcies. She will have some lines referencing some of his other failures as a businessman. They will be stated just as facts, but they are specifically designed to get under his skin in that moment. What does she have to do to win? I personally think that she will be the Hillary Clinton that we've seen in every debate she's been in so far. She will look polished, she will look calm, she will look competent, and she will look presidential and infinitely more informed than her opponent. That has always been the case in almost every debate she's ever been in, certainly in every debate she's been in 2016.
Yeah, and that will be more than enough to win after the first debate. But if she tries that in the first debate, it won't be enough, and we'll go through this whole rigmarole unless, and this is the part where I think she might decide that she'd rather have Gary Johnson on that podium. If Gary Johnson's on that podium and Johnson takes on Trump and messes around with him, she plays the grinder, she runs out the clock, she does the whole for lack of a better term, the presidential routine. She looks like she's above it all while Johnson and Trump mix it up. If it looks like Donald Trump wins the first debate, Hillary Clinton has some heartburn until the second debate. If people talk about Gary Johnson winning the second debate, Hillary Clinton's home free.
No, boy,
because at that point,
this is where you and I see it.
Because at that point, Gary Johnson will just start hoovering votes from Donald Trump. He won't take a whole lot of votes from Clinton. He'll be taking votes from Trump and from folks who weren't going to vote anyway, who weren't going to vote for anybody. And what you would see is Trump falling, Johnson rising, and Clinton around 42 to 45% marching to victory.
Well, I would say two things to that. One is from your lips to God's ears is my first reaction. And my second reaction is that I think it's exactly the opposite. My greatest fear for Hillary Clinton is not her own performance in these debates. I always know she's going to give a competent, solid performance. My greatest fear is that Trump, knowing that he's losing if he doesn't shake things up, demands that Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, but at least Gary Johnson gets into the debate because Trump wants to bleed votes from Hillary to Johnson. I don't think that there's a danger of people bleeding from Trump to Johnson. I think it's Hillary who has more to be concerned about. I see it exactly the opposite.
I think that's
totally disagree.
Wrong. That is completely and utterly... Okay, let me rephrase that. In California, where Republicans don't get 30% of the vote unless a meteor crashes into Northern California and kills everybody, that may make more sense. My point is, here on the East Coast, Johnson takes votes from Trump. He takes votes from Trump all day long.
Absolutely true.
Okay, I will. You guys are really what's the word I'm looking for? Tied in there, tuned in there. So I'm going to trust you, although my instincts still tell me otherwise. With that said, we only have a few minutes left. We've talked about the three major candidates. We haven't really touched on the other woman who's running for president, Jill Stein, who she had a tough week, didn't she, Greg?
Oh, she's a train wreck. She is just a train wreck. And I wonder who's actually running her campaign. And this was a tough week for her, especially, which topped it off. The best part was when she went to the wrong city.
What city was the event in, and where did she land?
I actually did not know, because I do not care that much about her.
It's your backyard. The difference was Cincinnati, and she landed in Columbus.
That's like 2.5 hours difference.
Did the campaign have any explanation for that mix-up?
It was a mix-up.
That's what they said. It was a mix-up, and they put her in a car for 2 hours.
You know, it wouldn't have been that bad if they'd had Wi-Fi access, and they could have checked, let's say, with the airline schedules. But that's really not a play for Jill Stein because of her antipathy towards Wi-Fi. Anybody want to comment on that?
Gregory,
yes.
Is the real faux pas for Ms. Stein the fact that she couldn't bother to access Google Maps to know where she was, or that she forgot to call the governor of the state that she was in an asshole?
No, calling the governor of Ohio an asshole usually gets you like all sorts of. The police hate him, so she could have got an escort, and she could have got here much faster. That would have been the best
police
thing.
hate John Kasich? This is news to me.
There's a great story about John Kasich where he was pulled over for speeding just as he became governor. And the first thing he did was he jumped out and he said, "Hey, do you know who I am?" And the guy said, "Yeah, you're speeding." And he goes, "What? I'm the governor." So the next thing he did was he went to a big formal fundraiser, and he said, "Can you believe that idiot cop didn't know who I was?"
He did that. It was on video.
And half the group said, "Ah, ha, 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 idiot cop." And half the group said, "You can't say that about cops because we're Republicans and we like cops." And he was forced to apologize. He said, "Well, maybe I didn't use the right word." And we're still pissed off about it. The police, for the first time, did not endorse him ever. They've never endorsed him in Ohio. And every police officer I know.
Okay, we got the message.
Well, you know what's so awesome is this is our 50th episode tonight, and almost all of the episodes we've been fortunate enough to have Greg mention that. So, with saying that, guys, it's been a great podcast tonight. Guys, don't forget to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/More Perfect Union Podcast. Please, please, please post our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can learn more about your weird friends on the More Perfect Union Podcast. And if you enjoy political debate and you'd like to be a part of ours, please join us on Facebook in our political discussion group, Open Fire. And something new we're unveiling tonight with our 50th episode is we would love to hear from you guys, and we would love for you to send us your questions. So if you would like to send us your questions that we will answer at the closing of each show, please check us out, message us on our Facebook page, shoot us a message, and we will pull one out of the magic hat each week. So,
and it can be about politics or about, whether I'm single or not, which I won't answer tonight.
Right, exactly. We have a cliffhanger now. Look at that. So, anyways, well, thank you guys for joining us this week. We look forward to seeing you next week. Good night.
Happy Labor Day.
Keep on drinking.